more and more the receptivity to this is growing. And the David Lynch Foundation also is supporting meditation for prisoners. So in the state of Oregon, for instance, there's a prison where the prisoners are starting to meditate, the guards are starting to meditate, the staff are meditating, and the warden is meditating. And prisoners who get this technique are not going to go back to prison. It starts relieving this huge stress and anger and all the things that drove them there. Native Americans in the United States, they're suffering from diabetes and alcoholism. There's 2 tribes now where the whole tribes are learning to meditate. They're doing a big research study on that. Symptoms of diabetes are lifting away, and they had prophecies in their culture saying one day natural law will return. And they say Maharishi is bringing natural law back. So the entire Indian nation is looking forward to starting this practice. Post-traumatic stress disorder, veterans returning from the war, they say 30% are suffering from this condition. And they're very macho, so they don't want to tell people about it, but they're suffering, and again, it affects all their life. So they're starting to teach meditation to the veterans. The great director, actor Clint Eastwood is very interested in helping doing that. He's been meditating longer than I have. And what they do, the government does to alleviate post-traumatic stress disorder, you wouldn't believe. It's almost a cruelty. And they get this technique, again, it comes from within. And they say, I've got my life back. And it really works. ADD, ADHD, kids they said would never sit still to meditate. They get this technique, they sit, love it, and symptoms start, going away. Doing a big research study on that. Also a big research study on bipolar is going on. If you're a human being, they're doing a big study for homeless. These homeless in New York City at the Doe Fund, they go in for a year, they're taught vocations, and they found that when they went out, most of them went back to the street. Same way in the prisons, most of them go back to prison. Teach them this technique, change from within, change from within. They won't go back on the street. They film these people, before they start, after. It's a world of change. So beautiful. It's a human being thing to experience this field. It's our home. Another name for this field is Atma, meaning the self. Know thyself. Know it by experiencing it and unfolding it. So beautiful. Stories are one thing, and the happiness in your life is another. And I struggle with this question because I wonder what's wrong with me that I make these stories, but I have so much happiness doing them. So stories always have conflict. Great stories have highs and lows, torment, much negativity, life and death situations, and it's characters and a world that you can go into and experience, but you could come back out. And you can have this experience if you choose to. The thing is, I always say, the artist doesn't have to suffer to show suffering. And you just have to understand it. Ideas come, and many ideas are prompted by our world. And our world's filled with negativity, all kinds of things. Ideas come into there, and sometimes ideas come that I fall in love with, one for the idea, and two for the way cinema could show that idea. And then I'm doubly in love, and know what I'm going to do, and go about translating that idea to cinema. I say always that films are like little children. And if all your little children are lined up and someone asks you, which is your favorite child, you'll notice that they all are looking up, waiting for your answer. And then you see their little faces and you say to the people, I love all my children equally, except for Dune. I always say the same thing. Ideas. Ideas are everything. And I say we don't do anything as human beings without an idea first. And so the whole thing is to get these ideas. And I equate it to fishing. And when you desire an idea, it's like baiting a hook. And you lower the hook into the water. Just try to catch those fish, catch those ideas. How deep that hook goes depends on the size of that ball of consciousness. And Transcendental Meditation, right from the beginnings, starts to expand that consciousness. The deeper the hook goes, the bigger the fish, the more understanding of those ideas, it goes like that. So it first starts with a desire. Then somewhere along, and the same thing in fishing, you have to have patience. You don't know when they're going to swim in. When one swims in, it may represent just a fragment of the final film or story or painting or whatever. But you fall in love with this little fish. And now that you have this idea, you write it down, and thinking about this is even more bait. So now you've got even more bait on the hook, and more quickly other fish will swim in and hook onto that original idea. And a story will start to emerge. You may not understand it at first. It's like putting some puzzle exists in the other room, and someone flips in pieces of the puzzle, and you're putting them on the floor, and you don't understand what it's going to look like. But little by little, the more that come in, the story, is shown to you. And then you're writing it down all the time. Finally, it forms itself into a script. And then it exists in word form, and you write it in such a way that when you read it, you remember that idea as if it just came fresh. And then you just need to translate those ideas, those words, into cinema. And it's made up of many, many, many elements. So the thing is to be true to the idea and be true to every element. Don't walk away from any element until it feels correct, because the whole is built on many little elements. So each day, get those elements to feel correct. Then you have a chance of the whole thing working. Artists, for a long time, the starving artist in the garret. It's so cool to be the starving artist. It's very romantic. And some slight amount of suffering, melancholy, a little bit of depression, some kind of suffering. I always say if it's a male artist, a great way to get women. Because they start feeling sorry for you, they'll climb up to the garret, fix you meals, and possibly spend the night. If you think about it a little bit more, suffering is the enemy to creativity. Negativity, enemy to creativity. If that artist is really depressed, can't even get out of bed, if he's really filled with anger, just occupies the mind, can't get ideas, can't work, really and truly sad or weak, filled with fatigue, they can't work, and if they work, it's not that much fun. You give this artist this technique, he's going to experience infinite creativity, infinite. Going to experience infinite energy, infinite happiness. What happened to me, I was filled with anxieties. I felt exactly the same way. Super cool to suffer some. And people do feel that you're a real great artist if you can withstand the suffering and make great stuff. But it's really baloney. So what happened to me, I was filled with this anger that I take out on my first wife. Think of all the domestic violence in the world. No one wants to be that filled with anger, but they are. They're filled with stress, and it affects every part of life. I was taking it out on my first wife every morning, making her life hell. I start Transcendental Meditation. 2 weeks later, she comes to me and says, "What's going on?" And as I said, I was quiet for a while because it could have been any number of things she might have been referring to. So I said, finally, "What do you mean?" And she said, "This anger, where did it go?" it went so naturally, I didn't even realize it. I start getting more self-assured because you go out in the world and you're worried and you're thinking, you try to cover it up, but when it starts coming up from within, you get more self-assured, more self-sufficient, happier, more filled with energy. People are so tired. They're not sleeping well, they take stuff to get them to sleep. It's kind of a mess. This, you sleep like a baby, you've got more energy, you need less sleep finally, and you are happier in the doing. And this negativity lifting away gives you a sense of huge freedom, and freedom to catch ideas and realize those ideas. So you're just going. You're going in the work, and it feeds the work, and it feeds all aspects of life. But for me, it really fed the work. Consciousness is everywhere. Everywhere. And so surrealism is part of consciousness. A star is part of consciousness, a fish, a babbling brook, a tree, all part of the big show. Surrealists I like because they're very interested in dreams, and I love dream logic. And surrealists I like because they have different tricks to conjure ideas. Like they put words in a hat, throw the words out on the rug, and read a new order, and maybe ideas come from that. I'm all for it. I like the surrealist paintings. I like Magritte the best, I think. But I also like Max Ernst. I think he's a surrealist. And but I like consciousness more than surrealism. Maharishi wanted me to go out, but it was through Bobby Roth. And we did a 13 university tour. That was one of the first things I did publicly. And in the University of Michigan, that started the tour. I was petrified. I don't like to speak in front of people. And I thought, okay, this could be the kiss of death. My career is gone, and yet I wanted to do this. And so I remember just thinking, put one foot in front of the other and go out and answer the questions. And it was a beautiful night. People really want to know this. They really do. And there's many misunderstandings about meditation, but you can clear those things up with questions and answers. And the receptivity was one way then, but every time we go out, the receptivity we notice is getting more. Less misunderstandings, more hearing the thing and being for it. Whether they start or not, they're getting more and more for it. And the more the principals start talking to other principals, teachers start talking to other teachers, people start talking to other people, the more it goes into the air, and pretty soon it will be very natural for the world to be diving within.